I just want to say welcome to everybody. I'm so excited about this presentation today. It falls at a particularly good time for me. I mean, learning how to quicken your process, speed up your process is always welcome, but I'm starting a new book, and so this is great for me to start to get this lesson when I already have a new idea in mind and can run with it. So I'm really excited about that. So KJ is going to introduce Suzanne Kelman in just a little bit, but first I want to tell you that our meeting today, and Dan, you're going to need to unmute. Our meeting today is sponsored by the fabulous Dan Dwayne. Dan has a new book coming out, and he's going to tell you all about that. I want to show you this awesome cover, though. I'm going to share my screen so you can see that cover. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Isn't that fantastic? I just love that. So, Dan, why don't you tell us? I'm going to stop sharing. I'll share. Why don't you tell us about your new book? Are you here? Well, Dan got shy, I think.
That's unusual for Dan.
Well, he's not at home. He's at church. So.
Yeah, he said he was having to come in remotely from his church. So,
well,
so he may have
give him a chance when he comes back in.
Yeah, we can come back to him. But he does have a new book coming out. And so let me explain to you how the sponsorship process works, because it's something new that we started, and I'm really excited about it because I've already booked my month, submitted just this morning. So we're opening up a sponsorship opportunity for writers who have a new book coming out or a new series coming out, or for artists who have a gallery showing, something like that that's a new release that you want to get some eyes on. And so I see Dan came back in. So Dan, I'm explaining to him about the sponsorship. So on our website on caprockwriters.com, I'm going to share this screen so I can show you. There's a link up here for sponsorships. And so you just click on there, and you can go through, enter your information. I just did it, like I said, I just did it this morning, and it was super easy, really quick. I got to upload the artwork that I wanted to share, and so if that month is available, then I will be sponsoring the May meeting, because that's when I have a book that I'm going to release, and so I'll have a chance to talk about it in the meeting, and then this will be in our video that goes on our YouTube channel, and so you get a little extra publicity. It's only $12, y'all, to sponsor the whole month, and we're doing that to pay for our Zoom monthly Zoom fee. So that's the purpose of that, and we want to get some exposure for you and your creative efforts. So it's an opportunity for you. So Dan, can you unmute and tell us about what you have coming up with your book?
Yes, I've got a new book coming out, The Ides of March, which is the 15th. It's an apocalyptic fiction. It's also a coming-of-age story. It's really a fun read. Think Percy Jackson and Stranger Things and a little bit of Stephen King mixed in, all that. So because we're dealing with angels and demons and that kind of thing. So it's going to be a little bit scary. So it's going to be so much fun. We're doing a book launch party on April the 3rd, and everyone is welcome to be there. It's going to be from 4 to 6 at the Mahon Library. So you guys come on over. We're going to have lots of door prizes and snacks and free stuff and more free stuff, and as much as I can put together.
Well, congratulations. I know that is a lot of work to get a book done, get it completed, get it. And something I need to mention too is that Dan's not only the author of the book, but he's also the illustrator of that cover. So he is just, he covers all the bases here in our group. And he's also just an all-around good guy, and he's very helpful with our technical stuff. So congratulations on that, and we wish you much success. All right, KJ, I think with that, we're going to turn it over to you so you can introduce Suzanne.
Sounds good. Well, today we have one of my best friends and writer buddies, and probably one of the most productive humans that I have ever met, which is partly why she created this entire system. Suzanne writes a lot of books in a year. I think we calculated it last week, and it's something like she did 12 drafts or something ridiculous. And she's got this amazing system. So I thought it'd be really fun to bring her here and have her teach the system to us. I've been using it for quite a while, and it's made me much more productive, way more focused. So before we introduce her and have her get started, I just wanted to give you a little background on Suzanne. She's quite an amazing writer. So here's her bio, her short bio. I couldn't get it all in there. Suzanne Kelman is an Amazon International Bestselling author and an award-winning writer and screenwriter, an award-winning comedy playwright. Her books have sold over 250,000 copies worldwide. Her script Held was recognized by the Academy of Motion Pictures and was shortlisted to the top 10 in the Academy's Nichols Fellowship competition. Her World War II historical fiction books, A View Across the Rooftops, When We Were Brave, and Under a Sky on Fire, are published by Bookouture. She's also the author of the best-selling South Lee Bay series, The Rejected Writers Book Club, published by Lake Union. Born in the United Kingdom, Suzanne now resides in Washington State. Welcome, Suzanne.
Thank you, KJ. It gets longer and longer. I just got to shorten that down somehow so it doesn't seem so long. Did you get that from Amazon?
You gave it to me, and I had to shorten it just so I wasn't up here for 20 minutes telling you all the amazing things you did. But yes, welcome.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here. I have taught this class before, but I've never taught it on Zoom and never with the recording. So we're going to see how this goes this time round. So I would love to get some feedback at some point from your writers and everyone that's on, just to let me know how the process was for you, not as much the class, but how doing this was. It would be great to know. So, yeah.
Good. All right. So the way we have this set up is Suzanne has pre-recorded this stuff. She's also in a part in Washington State that has blackouts. So as a backup, we recorded everything. So we're going to play a 26-minute segment. Take notes, hold your questions for the end, and then we'll pause it, and Suzanne will have some time to answer her questions. Any of your questions, and then we have another section where she's going to show us some of the other things, like from a top view down of like the brainstorming section, and then we have a couple more segments. So the longest one is right now. If you want to put questions in chat, Suzanne, can you see the chat? You could answer that way, or you can.
Yeah, actually, I can totally see the chat.
Okay. Yeah, so if you all have questions for her, she'll be watching it. She's not presenting, so she could answer. Or if you want to hold it for the end, or you want to ask her in person, it'd be nice for the people who are watching this video later to have your actual question. So I'll let you all make that call. And I will share my screen, and then we'll start. Are you ready, Suzanne?
I'm ready, yeah.
Does anyone have any questions?
I was going to say at the beginning, so.
Anybody have any questions for Suzanne before we start? I will take that as a no.
I'm just going to give you a minute to make sure you've got all the materials that you need. We are going to be doing a hands-on halfway through the class, and I want to make sure that you have everything that you'll need for that. So you will need a big sheet of paper for brainstorming that we're going to be doing, and the bigger the sheet, the better. And you will also need some colored markers or pens that you can use. And also some flashcards or post-it notes would be good. So that's a big sheet of paper, some colored markers, some flashcards, and something to write with. So while we're doing that, I'm going to move to the next slide and introduce myself. So who am I? So my name is Suzanne Kelman. I am an Amazon International Bestselling author. You can read the full bio there if you want to. I'm just doing a quick rendition of it right now. And I have been writing for about 10 years, writing novels for about 10 years. I'm also a screenwriter. And I have sold over 250,000 books right now. and I have written nearly 20 pieces of work. And the process that I'm going to be teaching you to do today is a process that I've learned over those 10 years to help me to write faster. And that's what I want to be able to really help you with today. So let's start with maybe some questions. First of all, why would you want to write faster? Well, I like to write faster because I now work for a publisher, which means that obviously I'm on a deadline and I want to get that first draft out as fast as I can, because there's lots of reasons for that. One is to make sure it's working. Two is just to make sure I've got all the story elements in there. And so the first reason that I would see that you may want to write faster is just so that you can get things done quickly. Obviously. The second reason, maybe the second question that may come up for you is, well, if you're writing faster, does that mean you're not writing as well? Well, that in some cases that is true, but doesn't necessarily mean you're writing a worse first draft. The fact is that this process is not about writing quickly so much as the speed of the way you're writing. This class is about getting the process done quicker. And for that, I'm going to show you the elements that I use to do that. So it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to do a worse first draft. I do want to remind you at this point that when you are writing a first draft, that you are really just putting all your ideas into a huge document to create the story. A lot of people think a first draft is all you need to do. And really a first draft is just the beginnings. It is just you shoveling sand into a bucket to create the sandcastle later. It is not you creating a finished manuscript. So that's why when you're writing it, you should not be worrying about all the elements of bringing the story together or the craft. You should just be getting from A to Z as quickly as possible to get that first draft written. So that may be another thing that you're thinking of. Let me think if there might be any other questions that you would be thinking of. Well, I'll tell you what I'll do. Oh, that's what the other thing I was going to say was one of the reasons I like to write quickly is it gives me a lot more time in second and third draft to do the kind of writing that I love, which is adding the imagery, developing characters, making sure the story ideas are working. And if I've got something on the paper to work with, it is so much easier than trying to do that as you go along and figure things out under pressure. So what this does for you is it gives you an opportunity to really look at that full view of your story and be able to really clean it up. And so when you get to second or third draft, it's looking pretty good compared to how it would look in a first draft if you're spending a long time getting a first draft out. And the last thing I just wanted to talk about was you may want to see if a story idea is working. I've written about 18 to 20 pieces that are in first draft, and not all of those I developed into manuscripts. I wanted to see if the idea works, so I did my 6 weeks first draft, and that way I could see, is this a story that I really want to spend time on? And rather than spending a year writing that first draft, you get to do it in 6 weeks, you get to see it for what it is, and then you can see if this is something you want to continue to develop. So those are all reasons that I write quickly. You may have some of your own. And when we come to the end of the class, I'm going to open it up for questions and you can ask me more about the process at that point. So moving on. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview of how the class is going to run today. I use 5 basic steps to a first draft, and I'm going to be taking you through each of those steps as an overview. But today, because we only have an hour for the class, I'm only going to be teaching in depth the first 2 steps. And they're the most important steps for you, whether you write quickly, maybe you're a pantser. A pantser is somebody who writes by the seat of their pants. They just keep writing and don't have any plotting or planning. And I used to be a pantser, so I do understand how that works. Or if you're a plotter, this will work very well for you if you're a plotter, because you'll enjoy using the systems that I use. If you are a pantser and you say, I don't really want to be structured in, I do want you to watch the class anyway, because if you do hit a story block or you're struggling in that scary middle, this process may help you through it. And so it's worth learning these skills, even if you like to write by the seat of your pants. So I am going to be covering those first two elements, which really will help you with some of those issues. So we're going to be doing what are the first 5 steps, a brief overview of each step, the first step, the second step, and then after the first step, I'm going to give you a chance to do some work, some hands-on work yourself, once you've learned that part of the class. And then after the second step, I'll give you a little bit more time to develop that part of the class. And then we're going to do some questions and answers if we have time at the end. So without further ado, let's move on to the first part of the class. So here is my 5 steps to a first draft. And just to give you an idea of how this works, the fastest I ever wrote a draft was for a month, which was my second book in my World War II series, When We Were Brave. I wrote that very quickly in 4 weeks, and I used a technique called layering, which is used in the screenwriting industry, which is another industry that I work in. I won't be teaching that today, but just it is a way to write even quicker than to be able to layer one project over another. And I used that in When We Were Brave to get it written really quickly. And the longest it's taken me to write a first draft is actually the last one that I just did, that will come out in October, my book that will come out in October. And the reason that actually took 3 months, which was a really long time for a first draft for me, is because we had a lot of research. It's historical fiction, and we were actually held up with research in this, not by the speed of the writing. So the shortest I've done it is 4 weeks. The longest is in 3 months with a lot of historical writing that I had to do. So how does the process work? So the very first part of the process is the brainstorming. And I'm going to be using a process called mind mapping with you today, and we're going to do some hands-on with this as well. And if you don't know what mind mapping is, I'll go more into detail about that. But I found that for me, I'm not a line person. I don't like graphs and lines. I am very much a visual person. And if you are too, I think you'll really enjoy this part of the class, which is one way to do the brainstorming. The second part that I do once I'm finished with my brainstorming, and I should say at this point that even though you can see a nice set of lines here, I don't necessarily do this all in order. And what I mean by that is I'll definitely do the brainstorming first, but I would go to flashcards, and then I may go back to brainstorming if I need to think that fleshed out. Or I may go to dictation and then go back to brainstorming if ideas aren't working for me. So you can go back on any of these steps as you're working along. It's not a through line. It's just the process. If you take one piece of work to the end, this is what I would do with it. So, okay, so the first step, as I said, was brainstorming. The second step I'm going to be teaching you is I take the brainstorming from the brainstorming mind map onto flashcards. And we'll be looking at the way that I do that and how I make that happen. And I actually use 40 flashcards in my brainstorm, in my flashcards part of the process. And why do I use 40 flashcards? Well, I tend to write 2,000 words a chapter or a scene. And I'll be talking about the difference between chapters and scenes when we get to that point of the class. But I write about 40 scenes, which is about the average side of an average screenplay. And as I came from screenwriting to novel writing, I adapted that method from that. So because I write 2,000 words, my first drafts are normally 80,000 word novels. So of course, 40 times 2 is 80. So for me, 40 flashcards gets me to the end of a first draft, at end of an 80,000 word first draft with 40 flashcards of 2,000 words. Now, do I end up with 40 chapters at the end of it? Do I end up with 40 scenes when I send my book in at the end? Very rarely. This is just to start out. Normally, my last book was actually 50 scenes. The book before it, I think, was 43. But 40 is a good average to start with, to aim for your first draft, if you find that you write about 2,000 words and not a chapter or a thought or a scene. If you write more or less, you can adapt that. So if you write more words per chapter, you would need less flashcards. And if you write less, you would need more flashcards. But that's what we'll be working on in that section. Okay, the third part of the process I use is dictation. I would say out of everything that I do, this is the most important time-saving part of the process. And the reason you want to get brainstorming and flashcards first is because when you go to dictation, you want to have a really thorough idea of what that scene is going to be about, so that you don't waste time in dictation. So the way that I do my dictation is I actually send it out to a company called rev.com. They charge me by the minute, and I have a physical person that is transcribing that dictation for me. And the reason I like that is because obviously if I'm using lots of different historical names or different references or different times and places, there is more chance with a physical person of not having mistakes. But if you're starting out and you're on a budget, you can use other AI software out there that will record for you. You can record Dragon software that will do that. There's also your computer, if you can set up your own computer to record for you, or you can use an AI called Otter. That's OTTER, like the animal, .ai. And I think that gives you 600 minutes a month for free of AI, where you can just record and that will do the transcription for you. Just be aware that when you are using that, you're not going to have a human person, so then that the AI is not going to understand all of your words. It also may not put all your punctuation in. But if you're starting this out and you want to try this method and you don't have a lot of budget, I would definitely encourage you to use one of those processes just to get this method flowing. So I want to say with the dictation, I know a lot of people come back to me and say, you know, it's hard for me to dictate. I'm used to, you know, thinking through my fingers. I'm used to typing my thoughts. And it does take a little bit of time to learn dictation over physically writing your novel. But I really would encourage you to try and do that. And one of the things I do when I am dictating is I do a lot shorter sentences. So I may start out a sentence saying the day was, then I will stop the recording while I think about exactly how I want to describe the day. And then I would describe the day, then I would stop the dictation, then I would start, and she was walking along the lane, full stop. And that way I've split my sentence up into the way I would have thought about it as I was typing. So try to separate how you would talk to how you will dictate. It is different. You're not going to say those sentences as if you were talking to someone quite the same way. But do try dictation, because I can dictate, now I can do 2,000 words in 10 minutes. I can dictate in 2,000 words. So think how much time that would save you in your recording. It means that for me, I try and do 2,000 words a day. That means I can write 10,000 words a week with 10 minutes a day of dictation, which means that you can do 40,000 words. Is that right? I know I do. It takes me 6 weeks to do 2,000 words a day. So I don't want to do the math right now, but I know that's how it works out. So it means that you can write very quickly with dictation. So that's a really important part of this draft, of this process. So I do encourage you to do that, though. I won't be doing a class on dictation today. That's another class, but I do want you to know that is part of my 5-step process. Right, the third part of my process is, so I finish my dictation, I send it off to my transcription, or you give it to your AI, then you get it back to you. I don't even look at it at that point. I cut and paste it straight into another AI. I am using as much of the AIs as possible right now, automated people, not real people, that's computer generated people, AIs, to actually do the work for me, because it's going to be much quicker than having me read through it. So the dictation that the editorial software that I use is called Grammarly, Grammarley, I believe it is, Grammarly.com. And I just cut and paste it straight into Grammarly. And Grammarly will then come up with all the mistakes in there. And I can just go through that very quickly and select correct or incorrect in a very fast way in about 10 minutes. So with 20 minutes of work, I have now written 2,000 words. So you can see how quickly this process moves along when you are using all these processes. So the last thing I do is I do as much editing as I can in Grammarly. And I will even add to the story at that point, because Grammarly will be fixing it as I go along. And once I have what I would call an A-B, like a all the way through storyline, we're not looking at imagery here. We're not looking at character development. We're really just getting the scene banged out in first draft. And once it's clean editorially, then I put it into Scrivener, which is a writing software. Now, it took me a while to work out Scrivener. There is a learning curve with it. But the reason I do like Scrivener is because I can move my chapters around. I can get to my chapters very quickly. It has a binder on the side with all your chapters in there separately. And it makes it very easy for me when I come to the next stage. But you don't have to use Scrivener. I just wanted to make sure you knew my 5-step process, and that includes using Scrivener. And I'm not going to be doing a lesson on Scrivener today, and I do use it at a very basic level, but it just is a way for me to be able to move through those scenes quickly. So that's my 5-step process. So how long do I work on average? People often ask me that. I actually have a flow of work that looks like this. On day 1, the first thing I do once I've done my brainstorming and flashcards is I pull up the flashcards, I dictate for 10 minutes and send that off to my transcription service. Then the second day, then when that comes back, maybe I will throw it into Grammarly, fix it. And then the following day, I dictate again my next scene. And while I'm waiting for that scene to come back from transcription, I am then fixing the scene from the day before, adding a little bit of imagery, adding a little bit more to it and putting it into Scrivener. So each day I'm dictating a scene and I'm fixing a scene, and I'm fixing the scene that I dictated the day before. So I'm actually working on 2 scenes on the same day, though only one will be finished and ready to go into Scrivener, if that makes sense. Okay. So I'm going to move on to the next part of the process that I'm going to talk to you about, which is the brainstorming, the mind mapping, brainstorming. And what I'm going to do, we're going to look at this slide, I'm going to explain it to you, and then I'm actually going to do a hands-on version of this so you can see me actually doing this in process, and then we're going to let you do some of your own mind mapping. So the next thing we're moving on to is the brainstorming. The first slide is brainstorming. So here in front of you is a mind map. You can see it's lots of bubbles connected to other bubbles. So if you look at my mind map here, it is said that don't quote me, I'm not a scientist, but that when I was reading about mind mapping, it said that this is the way that our brain actually connects information. We don't connect things in a line. We don't do a start the way A all the way to Z in the way we think. We have random ideas and thoughts come to it that builds a map of a story. That's how our brain maps things. So this is why mind mapping can be a really useful way for you to actually look at your stories. So what it does is it frees up the brain from having to figure out, what was the third thought, what was the fourth thought, and lets the brain just map the story the way it wants to map. So when I'm mind mapping, I work in different colors because I'm a very visual person. I put the name of my new book as a central bubble. You can see here my new book. And so whatever name you want to call your book, if you don't have a name, you can put my new book. Then I will mind map out. From that, I'll add little lines with bubbles connected to them for different ideas. That as the ideas come to me for the story, I can connect them to that idea, that central idea. And you can put anything in those bubbles that you want. Here I'm using dialogue ideas, maybe some information about the protagonist, maybe the love interest, twists, events, and settings. But they can be as many or as little as you want. You could have in maybe your antagonist could be one of these. You could have ideas for, first, second, or third act. Anything you want to make these bubbles can be what they are. And so here I've just created a fake story just so that I can give you an idea of how this works. So if you go over to the pink settings bubble there, you see I suddenly had an idea. Okay, I'm going to set this story in Scotland. And then maybe I'm going to have a move to Ireland. So I've connected those two bubbles together because they're kind of similar. And then I suddenly had an idea, well, who is going to, so even though this is the love interest, I'm going to have him live on a sheep farm. I'm going to put that in my setting bubble. But I also could have put that over in the purple love interest bubble. I could have connected that button there. I could have had that bubble there. It doesn't matter. Do not get caught up in the process of the bubbles where they should be. Just allow the mind to be free and put things as they come up in your mind somewhere connected into the mind map. If we go down to the events, you can see I have 3 bubbles there that are connected together. And the reason I often connect bubbles together is because it's a through line of a thought. Okay, so she loses her job, she gets a job in Ireland, and then she works for his mother. So that's kind of a little through line of what happens with her work. And so because those bubbles work together, I've connected them together. But you see right below, I've got she's newly single. So that's a completely different thought for me, even though these are all events. So you can connect bubbles together. You can have them be single bubbles. You can have even bubbles be like I even sometimes connect 2 bubbles together, like across from one another, if they're events happening at the same time, maybe in a different part of the story. So there's lots of ways you can do it. There's no wrong way to mind map. The important thing is to, as you can see, 1, separate into categories. 2, allow your imagination free range. 3, if needed, create and expand an idea into a new mind map. So, for example, let's say I'm doing my setting bubbles and it gets too big for that one piece of paper. I can easily grab another piece of paper, make the central bubble now settings, and start expanding all those settings on a new piece of paper. And you may find as you're developing your mind map that you will get one idea that becomes big that you need to develop. Then you just grab a new piece of paper and keep the mind mapping. And don't stop until you've got every one of those ideas out onto those pieces of paper. And then number 4, create new maps to solve story problems. Let's say you're halfway through your story and suddenly you hit a big problem in the story and it's not working out for you. What I would do is grab a new sheet of paper, write the problem that you're trying to solve in that central bubble, and then mind map as many ideas as you can in those other bubbles and let the mind go as wild as it wants. Let it think about as many solutions, however ridiculous or however improbable, get them all down onto the mind map and let your mind figure out the problem. And it will. So that's another way you can use mind mapping, is to solve problems once you've started the story. Okay, so I hope that makes sense with the mind mapping, the brainstorming started the process. I'm going to stop the video at this point because I'm going to we're going to play another video with me actually doing the mind mapping process, and then we're going to have time for you to mind map after that. So don't feel as I'm mind mapping that you have to be doing it at the same time. You can of course be writing ideas down as you're listening to me for your own stories, but try and watch the process in the next video, and then we'll give you some time to make up your own brainstorming mind map in the next section of this class. Okay, we're going to leave it there for now, and we're going to move on to the next part of the story.
Okay. Back to you, Suzanne.
Hey, Good, great. So actually the next one is going to be me hands-on doing that. So did you want to ask if anyone's got any questions at this point? Do you want to do that? Anybody have any questions?
So I know you're not talking a lot about dictation, but I would like to know how long it took you, when you were talking about, you know, people who think through their fingers and stuff like that. That's definitely me. I'm uncomfortable hearing the sound of my own voice, and I don't have a really pretty British accent, and so
I don't. It sounds like my accent to me.
So I'm just curious how long it took you to, like, how much of a struggle was that to adapt to that, and how long it took you to really kind of get into the flow of that.
It does take a little bit of time. That's why I think doing AI to start with, like getting Otter software or something, is good. But when you think you can reduce that down to 10 minutes a day, the great thing about it is you can do it anywhere. I mean, I know KJ would write when she was like doing ballet class or something, you know, it really, really does try and get over that hump, because it really will make such a difference. And you will, at the beginning, it takes you a while. Like I said, at first I was dictating as I speak, and it was a mess, you know, and I realized, well, you can't, because even as you're hearing me talking, I'm recorrecting myself as I'm saying things. Yeah. But if you, what you can do is, it really is, as you're actually typing, you are thinking what you're about to type. You don't write what you actually thinking that, you know, I sat on the rock, and then you type it. So it's just kind of breaking that process from being a finger thing. And it is a little challenging, because I actually love the process of typing those words. Yeah. But remember, you're going to get to that in the second draft. You're really going to have that fun, because that first draft is out. So see it almost like not a note-taking, but just making note-taking more broader. And it does just keep practicing. And KJ, how long did it take you, KJ? Because you struggled with that too.
Yeah, I think it's a totally different part of your brain. So it's not just like get used to it. It's like you have to think like you write, and that's not that easy. What I kind of had to adapt at first was just to get, like, you're trying to get the, you know, talking about the note cards, get the basic ideas down. It was really hard for me to do dialogue and all that stuff at first. So like take baby steps, so that first you get like, so then when you start to write, you've got all your first parts of what's happening in each chapter. And then as you get a little bit better at the AI, then start doing the dialogue and, you know, all the other things that you're trying to put in there. Let your brain get used to it, because there is a whole different, I do think it's like a different part of your brain that has to kind of develop. So you be nice to yourself while you're learning it. And then do somewhere you're just practicing. Like, it's not important. It's like you're just talking. Like, I do a lot of meeting notes too. I have a meeting with a client, and then I just type in everything, you know, I record everything that happened right after the meeting, and then I go back and fix it. And so if you're practicing in things that don't matter as much, you're kind of building that brain to get ready for it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and also, Kim, you won't actually hear your voice, because once you send it off, it comes back written. So you don't hear your, that's true. I'm the same way. I hate hearing my voice too. Yeah. So you say it, and then it's literally, if you're doing Otter, you'll see it coming up on the screen as you're speaking. Yeah. I suggest you don't look at that, because you'll want to fix it as you go.
Oh yeah.
Close your eyes and just tell, as if you're telling somebody else's story, from your mind, you know, and just do it that way. Don't look at what's been written, and then just grab that and throw it into Grammarly. Don't even look at it at that point. The point is not to get caught up where we get caught up. Like, we get caught up in one sentence making it beautiful. We get caught up in editing that, and before we look, we've spent 4 hours correcting 2 paragraphs. Yeah. And this just gets you through that faster, so that you can get to the real writing in second draft. So
beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so are we ready for the second part?
Has everybody got their paper? Because right after this, we're actually going to be doing some mind mapping, and I do really recommend you try it, because, you know, if you've done it before, you might recognize it, but if you haven't, it really is quite freeing to be able to do that with your work. So even if you haven't got a story you're writing right now, make up a story. You know, just come up with a story that you could just, you know, use. So anyway, carry on. Okay, thank you.
Oops. Sorry.
That's all right. It's all the fun of Zoom.
I know. I'm not sure why the sound isn't working here. Let's try this.
Okay, so now we're going to move to the brainstorming part of the mind mapping part of the process. And just to show you how easy this is and how I can just do it on the fly. If we were in class, I'd get you to shout out some ideas, which I'd put on a board, but obviously we don't have that opportunity. So what I'm going to do today is I've pulled some cards out of my Storymatic box. You can get these online. It's just lots of different story ideas. And I'm just going to pull from a few ideas that may work together. But I'm going to show you that it doesn't really matter what you start with. I want to show you how your brain maps. So what I've done is I've set up this. This is a much smaller piece of paper than I normally work with. I normally work with something twice the size, but obviously you won't be able to see that on the camera. So I've kind of done everything in mini for you here, just so you can see. And I've set up the dialogue boxes exactly as they were on with the same colors as they were on the last slide. So you can at least be following them. So the idea, I've got some, so this is what I've got. I've got last chance. These Storymatic cards come with people and ideas of plot. So we've got last chance, revenge, memory of a kiss, wish come true, and welcome invitation, and regret. So I can pull from any of those as I'm figuring out our fake story here. And then I've got person with a devastating secret, teller of secrets. Oh, that's good together. Time traveler, grave digger, and explorer. All right. So as I'm thinking of these stories, I literally just pulled them 5 minutes ago, so I've not had much time to think about these. Straight away, what's coming out for me is a grave digger, a really easy person to write about, the setting and everything. So straight away, if I think that I'm not sure if he's my protagonist yet or she's my protagonist, but because that's an easy idea for me to jump out with, I'm going to grab my setting pen and I'm going to have graveyard at midnight. Okay, so I've already got a setting. All right, so teller of secrets. So now I'm going to go with events down here, which is my green pen, and I'm going to go someone in the shadows. Okay, then I can go, so I've seen how my brain's jumping around here. Oh, then we're going to go with teller of secrets, which is I think I'm going to make this a twist. So someone from the grave digger's past is also the person in the shadow. So I joined that together like that. You can also do that just so I know who I'm talking about. So now I'm going to go with time travel. So this person, the shadows in the graveyard at midnight, is a time traveler. So now I'm going to move over here. I'm going to travel my protagonist. So can you see how my brain is just mapping this? Time traveler returns to graveyard at midnight. You see, okay? Memory of a kiss. Okay, so now I'm going to actually love interest. I'm going to make the graveyard digger the love interest. Grave digger remembers last kiss from his love. Okay, so I don't know if I hope this is working. If you see what I'm doing, all I'm doing is grabbing ideas that are, so these, I'm pretending that these ideas are my brain's way of thinking, and I'm thinking of the idea, I'm just figuring out where that's going to work on the mind map. Okay, so I would just keep developing until I had a whole story. So I hope that helps you understand kind of how the mind mapping works. And I literally just did that straight away without even thinking about it. I've got lots of other cards I could use, and hopefully you have your own ideas of a story. So what I want you to do now is I want to get yourself a nice big piece of paper, and I want you to write your book name in the center. And you can use the same as me, you can use the same headlines, or you can use whatever works for you. And I want you just to think of as many different ideas that will work in, you know, you could go from adventure, you could have a death, you could have a life, you could have a birth, you could have anything, you could have a twist, you know, he's really in love with somebody else, you know, it doesn't matter what it is. Just get all of them down on that piece of paper and see where you end up. And then we'll give you 10 minutes now to work on your mind map, and then we'll come back with the next slide. Thanks very much.
Okay.
So I was going to say, I was only working to an hour class, so that's why I said they can have as long as they want. It was just so, but I mean, 10 minutes. And I really think this part of the class is actually where people get the most breakthroughs. So I really do encourage you to try and do this, even if you've never done this before.
All right. Do you think I should leave that last slide up so people can see? They can look at it.
Whether people want to do you want that last slide up? Does everybody want that? Is that helpful?
Yeah, I think it would be. Does anyone have questions for Suzanne before we get started on this piece of it? They're so quiet. Okay, I guess they want to jump right in. Okay.
I would find it really helpfully if we could have a picture on the screen of her mind maps to kind of.
Yeah, we're going to do that, Judy.
Yeah, that's a great idea. That's what I was thinking too. Just so you could go to those categories. It's hard when you haven't like done this before. So I will. I'm going to share my screen again, and you all can have at it.
And I have a whining cat, so I'm just going to deal with him real quick while you guys. I'll be back in 2 minutes.
Suzanne, it's been about 10 minutes. Do you want to interrupt all these beautiful ideas?
Yeah, sure. Let's see how people are doing. Does anybody need a little bit longer? Now I can't see everybody now. Did I hit a button that I shouldn't have? Now I can't see people, or is it just that's what's on the screen?
You can touch the top of that little box and choose your view.
Yeah. Thank you. So how do I do that, KJ? I just hit the, I see I can hit
yeah, the view, and there's different little patterns you can do. One could be whoever's speaking, speaker view, and one could be everybody.
So even if you've only got a few ideas down, hopefully you've got enough hands-on that you get an idea of how that works. Okay. Oh, good. That's good. I can see people now. Good. So do you want to, has anyone got any questions? Has anyone got any comments at this point?
If you do, unmute so we can hear you.
Suzanne, I'm wondering how, like, you know, a lot of my bubbles, I'm not really sure yet. Like, I don't know. I know I have some bubbles, I have some not. And you said you kind of went back and forth in those steps. And so I'm curious as to where your kind of where your threshold of certainty is before you move forward to the dictation. Like, how far do you get into this mind mapping before you like, okay, I've got enough to go on for now. And I know I still have these I'm uncertain about these things, but I know I can get started on it.
Yeah, I think, you know, like I was saying to you, that's where you often go back with that very first, when the first ideas are coming up, you may not have a very big bubble. You may not have a lot going on. What you'll find though, is that as you start to like moving forward, you'll start to get ideas and put it back into the mind map. I use the mind map as almost like my constant process that I'm going back to. When I was just doing my last book, we sat down, and because I've done this a couple of times now, my husband and I, took us 2 hours with the bubbles. We sat down, we went as many ideas, and at that point, not all those ideas ended up on the page. They were just ideas of, so I would sort of ask myself, so if she's about to blow up a building, where would she have been right before that? And I get that bubble on. What would happen right after that? And I'd get that bubble on. And some of those bubbles were very vague, but at least gave me a big enough map that I felt like, okay, I can move to the next stage. And I think even when I'm at the next stage, which is the 40 cards, I don't always have 40 cards. I have holes. Like I'm not really sure how we're going to get into that scene, but I know that scene's pretty strong for me, and that scene's pretty strong for me. And it's that mapping. It's that not worrying about, like, I don't know where that is, but having more on your map more on your board than you would be if you were just starting at the beginning and letting your mind run through the story. So, so I think it really is up to you at what point you feel you can start writing. I would, and the next process will help you with that actually, which is the card. So maybe we should play KJ in a minute. And then, has anybody else got questions along the same lines as that? That is a great question though, Kim. And I'm never, now I do it more, I'm more used to, but I think I'm ready now, even though I've only got 25 cards on the board. That makes sense. So.
Yeah, it does. It does.
I do. I mean, you've kind of answered it, but I guess if you go ahead and put your scenes in there, later you can worry in a second draft or later the transition scenes to tie them together a little bit better. So at least you've got your scenes, and those are the most important, because tying things together can come later, I suppose. Or do you try to do a little bit of that too at the same time?
I see where I'm at. Every book has been different. Sometimes I've had bigger holes. Well, I write historical fiction, so sometimes I'm not even sure what was going on in the war in that time. So I don't know what's going to get me to there. I'm following a train. And so what this does is this process takes away a lot of the things that stop us writing. So we get onto that first page, and then we're trying to think about all those elements in that first page, and we're trying to write pretty, and we're trying to make it sound right, and we don't really know where we're going. In stepping away from the page and doing this, you're allowing your mind just to create a story as if you were telling a story without that pressure of getting everything correct, without the grammar being right and the words being right. It just is just getting your mind in a different part of the process. And I totally agree. I often don't have those intersecting, I don't know how I'm going to get into the next scene. That doesn't matter. The point is to just get as much out at mind mapping stage as you can. Okay.
Yeah, and the way I've done it sometimes is I'm a little bit more of a pantser. I used to be like Suzanne. We both used to be total pantsers, and now as you do more, you're like, if I organize it, I'll go quicker. But sometimes, like, what I wanted to do is get the first 5 chapters of my draft to pitch it to an agent. So I didn't know exactly what was going to happen near the end of the book. I had a vague idea. So I mapped out the first 5 chapters. I did the cards, I did the dictation, and I got them ready, and I had an editor look at them, and then I sent it off. And now I'm like, okay, now I'm ready to get to the rest of it. So you could do it in chunks like that. As a pantser, it might be too much in your head to have it all at once.
Yeah,
I think some of it is style.
Even though I plot, I'm the same way. What I tend to do is I work outwards. Like, I'll have an idea of a scene in my mind, so I'll write that scene out on there, and then I kind of explode outwards. So what would happen right before that scene? What would happen right out that scene? Then I get another scene that explodes that one outward, just so I start to get all these scenes, and then I figure out how to join them together, if that makes any sense. It's just working the way your brain works, you know. Yeah. We all work differently. So
yeah. And that's how Diana Gabaldon writes her books. And that's what inspired me to write, because I thought, geez, that's an unorganized mess. Just like me. I could do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Look how beautiful that turns out. Exactly.
Yeah, no, she's humongously successful.
She's done okay with that.
Yeah. Anybody else have questions? Yep. All right. So I'm going to share my screen again, and hopefully I won't be clueless and mess up. Okay, I'm going to click these little boxes. Okay. All right. So now we're on.
So this next part, one more step we're going to take today during the class, and that is the flashcards part of it. If you remember earlier, I was saying that I use 40 flashcards to create my 2,000 word story. I did work out the 2,000 word thing, and I was a little bit off. So I'm sorry. That would be it would be 6 days a week, not 5 days a week. So if you're counting, that would take me to 72,000 words. But that's neither here nor there. I'm not great at math. So we're back to the flashcards. And so what you're going to be doing is creating that board of 40 cards. As I said, each card represents 2,000 words, and 40 cards represents an 80,000 word first draft. Okay, what you're going to do now is look at your mind map. Get your flashcards out, put them on the side. so you can have one when you need one, and look at the mind map and see if there's a natural story development, if there's a natural chapter that's popping out to you. And this is only for this class. When you're doing your own mind mapping, you will spend a lot more time doing this, but just for the sake of the class, find one scene that is already coming forward for you. And if you don't have one, just make up one for this point so you can learn what we're going to do here. So here I'm showing you on the right is actually the cards from my last book, Under a Sky on Fire, that I used. And as you can see, I've got my prologue here, my scene 1, which you can see I've got scene 1 and I've got chapter 1. So I'm going to quickly go over what the difference between a scene and a chapter is here, because I get that question a lot. In screenwriting, we use scenes because obviously if you've got to film in one place, you film for the majority of time that you need to do that scene, and then you may go to swap to a new scene to continue the story at that point. So the sort of chapter may not be finished. Say, for example, someone's having an argument and they start the argument in bed, then they have the argument over breakfast, and they continue the argument in the car, and then they end with one another in the relationship as they get to work. That's kind of almost like a chapter, but that's made up of 4 different scenes for the camera. Obviously in a book we're not doing that, but I tend to still work in scenes in my head because sometimes I like to split a scene between chapters. You may, and I'm explaining that a little bit more as I'm walking you through that, but sometimes you want to leave your reader wanting to know what the end of that scene is in the next chapter, and you start the next chapter with the end of the scene, if that makes sense, the end of the part of that story you're telling. So that's why I have scenes and chapters here. But in this book, each scene ended up being a full chapter, which was fine, and it worked out fine, but that isn't always the case. So let's just talk through how a scene would work. So once you've located something on your mind map that's going to work as a beginning, that has some sort of beginning, middle, and an end, if you've got one, then write that you're going to write that on the front of your flashcard. You don't have to do that right now. I'm just going to talk you through the process. You're going to have a go at this in a minute. And then once you've written down just a general description of the scene, what I do is I flip my card over and I write the beginning, the middle, and the end of that scene, so that when I come to dictate it, I've got a through line in my dictation. So I'm going to show you really quickly. If you have a look at my prologue here, I'm not sure how big this is coming up on your screen, but have a quick look at the prologue there. This was a flight scene of a Messerschmitt that was coming in over England. I write World War II fiction, so this was the enemy coming in, and I wanted a very exciting opening to my story, so I wanted to do a Messerschmitt under attack by British fighters. So you can see when I was writing the flashcard, I wrote flight scene that will be mirrored in the middle of the book after the first day of the Blitz. So that was my idea, but when I turned it over, you can see what's highlighted in blue down here is what I put on the back of the card. So the beginning of the scene, set the scene, high drama, fighting into an attack. So we have the beginning of that scene was me really like him under pressure. He's going towards the battle, and it's all that kind of tension. Now, the middle of the scene, obviously we have the attack, and the middle of the scene is going to be him losing his best friend, his rear gunner, which is kind of the turning point for the scene there. So the middle of the scene was like you go high action, turning point, oh my gosh, he just lost his best friend. The end of the scene are the Brits chasing him, fleeing towards the channel, and then I would left it as a cliffhanger. So in the end, I didn't actually finish the scene. The scene will be finished in the middle of the story, so we don't know what happens to him until the middle of the story. And so the end of the scene is him fleeing for his life back to Germany, and I've left the reader not knowing what happened to him until the middle of the story. So there's a typical example of a scene that isn't finished, but it is a chapter in its own right. So the prologue has a beginning, a middle, and an end of that particular chapter. So that's what you're going to be doing once you've figured out what is going to happen there. So here's the rundown. You're going to create your board of 40 cards when you're not with me, obviously not today. Each card will represent 2,000 words. You'll then write a brief overview. From your mind map, transfer an idea onto the card front, just like I have here. And then you're going to flip over the card, write out the scene in bullet points with the beginning, middle, and end. And then once you've done that, then you can, using the correct beats of story structure, arrange the events on the cards in the right order. So eventually, once you've actually done this, and you may end up writing scenes out of story at the time, just because you know what a scene is going to be or a chapter is going to be, and you can bring those together in your first draft at a different point. I very rarely write my story in order, and this is what's great about this process is you don't have to. If you suddenly have a great scene, you suddenly have a great chapter 4, you can go ahead and write that and leave that sat in Grammarly or leave that sat in Scrivener until you're ready to put scenes around it, which is wonderful, which is why I like doing that. So that's how we're going to write our flashcards. I'm not really going to go into the ebb and flow of how a story is structured. That's a different class for me, of how you figure out the whole overview of a story, all the arcs of a story. That's a different class, but this gives you a general idea of how we do the mind mapping and the flashcards. So now we're just going to spend 5 minutes or so with you just finding one of those scenes, writing a brief description on the front of the card, then flipping over the card, writing a bullet point beginning, middle, and end of that particular scene or that chapter, and that's all you've got to do for this class. So we're going to give you 5 minutes now just to do that, and then we'll come back to you then.
Okay.
Good.
Questions, and then I'll put that screen back up for you.
I will say there's nothing more exciting than putting my 40 blank cards up on a board and knowing I have a whole story in front of me, even though it's not a story yet. It's like it feels so doable when it's just flashcards. And I will say it is much easier to fix your story as a flashcard than it is as a chapter. Once you've written it, that is so much more work. You can see it working on the board so much better and go, you can move cards around. You can go, that's not going to work. I can put that in. It does help a lot than having to go back and redo work. So I will say try and fix as much as you can in the flashcards. And you can already be writing, Kim. You can already have done, 7 or 8 scenes and still be working on your flashcards and seeing where it's going. So, all right. So if you want to take a minute just to figure out the flashcard thing, I think that would be great.
Yeah. And I'll put the screen back up.
And this does all sound very left-brained, but honestly, I'm very right-brained. And I find I love this process still because I work in both brains then. It's fun.
Suzanne, it's been about 5 minutes.
Right, yeah. Just you want to check in and see how everyone's doing?
How's everybody doing? They're so quiet. I guess.
I know they are so quiet. It's good though. It means they're thinking, right?
You guys still there?
If we hear them sitting eating chips, then we know we're in a bad way. It's like
the unmute button wouldn't work, so I kept talking. Nothing's going on. Okay, I'm ready. Yeah, this is great.
Great. So, is anybody willing to share, a little bit about what they had on their mind map and what they moved onto their cards? Anybody happy to share a little bit of their scene or their chapter?
I'm always ready to share anything, even if it's good, bad, or ugly. But I had a scene on this book that Debbie Ware and I are working together about a personal crisis that came up. But the overview would be that an orphan girl is captured by Prince Fearson's men. The beginning of the scene, we find out this because her brother is running down the path and he informs Throm, which is one of our characters. The middle scene would be Throm sneaks up and recaptures the orphan girl. And the end scene would be in their escape from Prince Fearson's men, he wounds one of the prince's men. And so that would be just a very quick overview, beginning, middle, and end, but it gives me I see where that gives me a lot of room to then start adding details when I start writing. So excellent.
And that's a perfect scene, because you've got the build up to the action, you've got the actual action in the middle, and you've got a cliffhanger at the end where we don't know what happens to the guards or whatever. You know, you're leaving the character. So that's a perfectly written scene. Well done, Jan.
Thank you.
I know, it sounds very intriguing, and
it does. I want to read it now.
Exactly.
All right, we're working on it. So maybe we'll get a lot faster now that we've had this workshop. We can get it done. So,
DK, do you want to say what you put in chat?
Well, yeah, what I said was I wish I had my smart board that I had when I was teaching, because I love that smart board, and I could have mapped, you know, that's what Richard Castle had when he, on his TV show, when he did all of his mind mapping and notes, and he could just, you know, do screens. And I just wish I had that. I was going to tell you what I wrote, but let's hear it.
No, I'd love to hear what you wrote.
Okay, I'm taking some weird drugs, and so dream this absolute.
Make the most of it.
Yeah.
I dreamed almost an entire novel, and once in a while that happens to me. So, of course, you know, what you write down and what you dreamed are going to be two different things. So anyway, my setting I've got for my card is dog kisses in a booth run by the protagonist and her fiance, and it's an ASPCA fundraiser. And this little boy's afraid of this big slobbering pit bull that they've got that loves to give kisses. So she gets her chihuahua and puts a little dab of bacon on the little boy's cheek, and the chihuahua goes to town. And then this big bucks handsome guy comes up, and he wants to get a kiss from the bulldog and asks her how much one from her would cost. And she tells him $1 million. Wow. And they start negotiating. And she agrees to kiss him 11 times for $1 million.
Oh, it's like what was that? Indecent Proposal? but YA or new adult version?
Yeah. Well, no, this is unadult. This is not adult. So anyway, he tells her he's going to send his lawyer over to run up the contract for a legal document because he didn't want her to sue him for sexual harassment. and that he's going to, and so they announced that they've raised $1 million for the shelter for 11 kisses. And her fiance just shrugs and says, well, I guess it's for a good cause. That's all I've got.
Did you have a beginning, middle, and end to that? Did you?
Well, the beginning was the little boy, and the middle is the big bucks guy showing up, and the end is the fiance saying, I guess it's for a good cause. But what I was going to say is your idea to put beginning, middle, and the end on the back of this card is genius.
It is. It is.
It is genius, because I don't think in terms like that.
Right.
And I just, that will force me to bring things to a close or tidy things up. Thank you for that.
And isn't it easier to do it on a card than it is if you were halfway through that chapter trying to figure out how to end it? And that's what I'm trying to say is don't stop being pantsers, don't stop being creative. What this does is it just makes you freer, because now when you get to that scene, you can go all over the place with the creativity because you know where it's going. And that's what I love about this process. It's not that it cramps my creativity, it allows my creativity because I know what I'm writing, and that makes it so much more fun for me. Yeah, good. Anybody else want to share? I'm like, this is fun.
I wanted to share, I took Suzanne's version and I kind of super duded it because that's who I am.
Super duded it.
Because what I did, I have a story structure. So I've added story structure into my cards, and I have it by character, and then I have it by I use the Marshall Plan by Evan Marshall, and it gives you, like, if you have so many viewpoint characters, it should be this many pages and this many chapters, and then it evens it out about which protagonist gets so many. And then the end has, like, very prescribed, okay, wrap up this storyline, 7th from the end, and 6th from the end is this storyline. So it's a lot more structure. So I've plotted out 2 books. I just wanted to show you this. It's somewhat ridiculous, so I apologize for being ridiculous, but
oh wow,
it's taller than me. No, it's almost as tall as me. But it has, each color is a character, and then I have, you know, there's supposed to be surprises at certain points. So before I had those cards, I was like, okay, here's where the surprise goes. I need X number of scenes before that. So I mean, I just wanted to show you my, like,
that's awesome.
It really did help me get organized. In fact, I got so organized that I wrote way too much and 2 books, but anyway, so
that's awesome.
Okay, so Susan,
go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, are we ready for the next?
Is there another? I think isn't it questions now? Well, oh yeah, there might be a last slide. Is there?
There's a last slide. Well, you kind of tie it all together.
Yeah. Okay. Go on then.
Oh wait. I guess I need to share it.
Cards. So in front of you, you should have a mind map that you're going to be working on. You should also have at least one flashcard that has an overview of a scene or a chapter on the front.
Is this the right thing, Suzanne?
I think so.
Okay, sorry.
And flipped on the back should be a beginning, middle, and end. So what I'm showing you here again is a picture of the 5-step process. You've done the brainstorming part of it. You've done the flashcard part of it. And what you'd be left to do now is dictate. So you would then take that card with the beginning, middle, and end. And you could actually, if you felt like you needed to give yourself more of a script, you could add a little bit more to it on another flashcard or another piece of paper. But then all you would do then is press record and tell yourself the story or tell yourself that chapter in a nice brief overview. Please remember, as you're dictating, this is bare bones. You don't have to make this a gorgeous chapter. It doesn't have to be beautiful. You just need something that you're going to be working on later and adding all that wonderful stuff to. So that is that's the majority of the class we're going to be doing today. I'm actually going to be available for another 5-10 minutes to take questions. I'm sure you have some. I know when you first see this, it can maybe a little bit overwhelming, but do trust the process. It works great for me. Here's my details. I'm going to leave up on the screen in case you want to stay in touch with me. On Facebook, I'm Suzanne Kelman Author, or on Twitter, you can get me at Suz Kelman. Or I have a website, which is SuzanneKelmanAuthor.com. And over here on the right, I have 3 of my latest World War II novels. The one on the left there, Under Sky and Fire, is what you just saw the flashcards for. And When We Were Brave is the one I wrote in a month. And then A View Across the Rooftops, which has just sold over 100,000 copies all on its own. So that's been doing very well. So I'm going to stop the show. I'm going to stop the screen share now, so you can ask me questions about anything that you might want to know about this process. Thank you very, very much for inviting me. I hope you enjoyed the class, and stay in touch with me with SuzanneKelman.com or over on social media.
Cool. I forgot I had that last slide. That's good to know. But yeah. We've kind of said most of that. So have we got any last questions? I'd love to know people's feedback on the process, what they think they're going to use the most, what they think is what they like about it. Anything like that would be wonderful to get some feedback.
I have questions, but it's not so much on the process. Your books. My husband loves World War II. Anything World War II. He reads the magazines. He watches any kind of video, movies, documentaries, but he's not a reader so much as novels. Are any of these out on movie yet, or do you have movie deals? I know it's not kind of what we've been talking about today, but I'm curious about that because I would love to get these for him.
Unfortunately, none at the moment. We held the first one, Under Sky, View Across the Rooftops. We're still trying to develop into a movie. We're still working on that, but no, right now none of those are actually in movies. They're all on Audible. So I don't know if he would listen to a book rather than read a book. I know my husband's not a big reader either, and so he listens to everything. So yeah, they're all on Audible if that's something you'd be interested in. So.
No, I'll check that out then. I think he would listen to that then. Thank you.
I will say something about the concept of brainstorming and mind mapping and everything. And I used to kind of dismiss that idea of just throwing out any old thing, even the wildest things, if you know that they're not going to use, because I would think, you know, I don't have that kind of time. I need to get words, the words that count. Like, I don't have time to just throw out things that I know are not going to work. And then one time I was really, really stuck, and I thought, okay, well, I'm going to try that. And what that process did was it got me unstuck. I wrote down ideas that I knew were not going to work, like aliens landed, you know, like I'm not writing sci-fi and there's not going to be any aliens. Like, I know that's not going to happen. But the process of kind of just writing out all kinds of stupid things that were definitely not going to happen freed up my mind to get to the thing that did happen, that I did not see coming, and yet it fit right into place. You know, it really, it saved me so much time doing this thing that I thought was a waste of time. You know, it got me back onto the track. So it's, you know, it's just kind of acknowledging the way our minds work and working with that. And so now I look at this beautiful, messy mind map with all of these things, and I'm just so excited about you know, the possibilities that are in front of me now. So,
and there's nothing to stop you starting. Like, if you know you've got a really clear 3 scenes in there, you can start writing those right now, because you can continue the mind mapping. So you've got your scene out of the way for the day. You feel like, I've done my writing for the day, even if you don't rev it or you don't do it, but you're still mind mapping, so you have that story.
Right.
Well, you haven't got to do one or the other. I've probably got about 25 cards when I start writing.
Yeah.
Of really clear scenes, and then I keep going back to my mind map. I keep going back to my I don't wait till I've got 40 cards on the board, because that would be frustrating for me. I want to get writing, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that the mind mapping just allows you to tap into your subconscious. I feel like you've got this interface, and you're looking at the spelling and the grammar, and does it look okay on the page? It turns all that off, because it's not even there. You're making little circles, and just, so I feel like it's a way to get deeper. Maybe, Kim, that's what happens, that it was in there. It's just you can't get down to your subconscious yet. And like DK's dream is your subconscious coming up with these ideas.
Exactly.
Keep those drugs going. Maybe that's why broke the barrier down a little bit.
Exactly.
Hello, I don't know if you can hear me. I just wanted to say that I essentially did the same process for my last book that I wrote. And the first draft, I actually did the, traditional way, where you're just writing it out and, typing most of the scenes, but it just wasn't working. So I started over from scratch, and I basically did it exactly as Suzanne is saying, and with the brainstorm, then the flashcards, then the dictation and the editing. And I'll tell you, the draft that I got out of it was so much better than the way I was doing it before. So I highly recommend trying it, and just seeing if it helps your mind and the analytical side, the editorial side, get out of the way, to where the story is going to come out in a more enticing way that the reader is going to enjoy. So I recommend that you try it. And also, I wanted to say that I feel like the video and the pre-recording worked great. So
yeah, I do
encourage you to continue that. So
it worked very well.
So thank you for sharing that. It's good to hear that somebody else is trying this and it's working. You know, we're all so different. We think that, I think we all feel the same way. We love to just play in our stories, and is this really going to help it? And I think it really gets a lot of that fear out of the way, because you have a story. You know what, you get up that morning, you get your card out, you write it. It feels so calm and easy, because you haven't got to figure out any story problems. They're already out there. And what's exciting is, even if you have it all mapped out, for people that are scared of this, you wouldn't believe how often my story takes a different twist, even though I've got the story. But you can then, because you know where it's ending. And I had a character come forth in this story I've just written that I had not thought was going to be anything in the story ended up really coming forward. And it was great because I just could go with that and not have to worry about whether this was going to be, it was going to fit, because I already know how the story is coming together. So it really does help the process, not aid it normally. I'm just saying that not everybody I know, but for me, it's always been really helpful.
The other thing that it does for me is when I used to write so distracted, I'd be like Suzanne said, at my daughter's ballet, at piano lessons, your brain is overwhelmed by all this external stuff. But if I have a card of what I'm doing, I don't have to spend 15 minutes trying to figure out what's happening, where I'm going. It's like your mind can just be, oh yeah, and you write that little piece because it comes right into your head. So to me, it's way more efficient when you've got the cards instead of just be like wandering through a scene or whatever. It just, if you don't have a whole lot of time, it does make you way more efficient.
Yeah, you can take your cards with you. That's what I often have, my cards with me. And if I know I'm going to be waiting at the doctor's surgery or I'm going to be doing so, I have my cards with me. And then I just flip up a scene and I start writing the beginning, middle, and it's great. That's the nice thing about it. It's a totally portable system. Once you've got it, you can do it anywhere. And it just takes 10 minutes. Same with the rev. If I'm waiting for somebody, I'm in the car, I can rev the scene and just grab a card and start. It's really wonderful because you don't have that, that I need to be set in my special spot with my special cup of coffee and no distractions to write. You can write anywhere and everywhere,
Yeah. I had a job that I was doing that was a 2-hour drive once a week, and I was revving on my drive.
Yeah.
I used the drive there to be creative and come up with what it was, and the drive home to actually just record what I was doing. So it sure used that time well.
Yeah.
You couldn't write while you're driving, but you could talk into the thing and dictate it. So.
Yeah. Great.
One question, do you ever work on more than one book at a time? I mean, this would allow you, but does it split you up in too many directions to write?
No, actually, that's a really good question. And I meant to bring that up, particularly if you're writing a series. This is a great way to write a series. I'm always working on more than one book at a time. In fact, right now I'm working on 2. I normally work on 3 because it's no different than watching 3 TV shows or reading 3 books. It takes you a minute to get in on that story and this character, and then you get in. And it's actually really easy because the process is so split up. And you know which part you can pick up a card, or you can pick up a rev, or you can pick up a Grammarly. And it's so easy because all you are is focused on a small part of that puzzle. You're not having to constantly be holding all that big story in your brain. You only got to fix that scene, or you got to fix the scene for the next one. What I normally do, which I'm doing right now, is I'm revving a new book while I'm editing another book. So right now I just got my edits back from my publisher for the book that's coming out in October. And so I'm cleaning that one up. That's the slow edit that's going through it and thinking it through and making sure everything sounds right and fixing what she wants fixed. But every morning for 10 minutes, I'm actually transcribe. I already have the next story out on my board. I'm just transcribing my next story. And it's actually really fun if you like variation. You get to like 45,000 words and you hate your book. Well, that stops that because you're always working in a different book. You're like, oh, it's fun. I'm writing in the next book. And the great thing about if you're writing a series, you can be mind mapping what the book 3 while you're physically in the second draft of book 1, and you can be revving book 2. I know it sounds weird, but really, once you've got those 3 boards up with your cards on it, you can be anywhere. It doesn't really matter because all you're concentrating, there's a tiny piece of that puzzle. And you know where it's going and finishing, which is great. So yeah, it's great for series. And I always work on one more book. Are you writing a series, or are you writing more than one book, Judy?
Well, we're working on a series, Debbie Ware and I are, but I'm working on a different series that's totally different. And sometimes I'm having trouble getting back to that other series. So I might sometimes start too many things at a time, so, but yes, I could see how it would work really well within the series. And we've already started ideas for the second and third book, but my whole other series is just totally a different kind of book. So I do need to jump back into it. And I think I'm going to start putting my boards up on the wall. I have space to put that stuff. And I think that will keep those things and me moving into it a lot quicker too. Like these large pads that we wrote, our little bubbles on. Well, I think I'll do the same thing and have it up there.
Good.
I actually I actually put mine on. You know, you can get these big sheets of like a foam board that is for art or for putting posters on. Right. I can get 40 cards on one of those, and I carry my board around. So I literally just put like flashcards and I stick them on there with it, and I carry my boards all over the place. But it's really fun to do that, and so yeah, it's great to have them up. Because, and KJ, you can speak more to this because you're right, aren't you? Writing a series at the moment, or you're thinking. Yeah. You want to talk a little about that?
Yeah. Well, the foam board, this giant thing I got was like $15 at Office Max. So, and it fit 2 books on it. You know, I have lots of. It was supposed to be 1 book, but this is how. But yeah, I have a 4-book series. What I'm doing right now is I'm having Alexa read me book 1. If you've bought the Kindle book, Alexa can read it to you. So I'm listening to book 1 while I'm doing some of the more mindless either tasks for my job or for my writing, or, you know, you're doing Grammarly or something, you don't need to think. So I'm listening to the first book so I don't miss any of like that feeling and the pieces. The second book I just started, so I'm having Alexa read that. But then I'm plotting the 3rd book. I've got all of my cards and I've already finished the 2nd draft, but I'm putting the 4th draft's cards up. I've got about half of that done. So it's doing really well because all the little threads, and then I have a list over on my wall of loose ends, like as I'm reading through or listening, stuff that I want to put into the 3rd book or the 4th book. I'm just keeping a list so that I can make sure they get into these cards and stuff.
Are you mind mapping that, or have you got it on cards, KJ? How are you keeping the new ideas that are coming up for you?
Well, I started mind mapping. That's where I started with. That's how I got these. You know, this giant board of stuff was all mind mapping. And I took, like you said, you start with 1, just like what's going to happen. And then I tend to do my mind maps like this happens and this happens and this happens with each character. So then I have a page for Ronnie and a page for my, you know, just so that I can keep track of their whole storyline. So there's a lot of different ways to use it. It's great for a series though. And Jan, like you have all these ideas. This made me sleep at night because it was down somewhere.
Yeah.
Mind map or something. You're not just like, oh God, I got to go write that down. I'm going to forget this important thing. Well, if you've mind mapped it, or you just add that little piece, a new bubble, it just keeps it somewhere. So you're not like, I don't know. I always get stressed out if I'm like, I'm going to forget. I have to put it all somewhere. So.
And I know there's things about standing back from a mind map and looking at that whole picture. It just makes it so much easier than like trying to look down a list or trying to read it to yourself. You're like, oh yeah, that could be there. And you can start connecting things as you're looking at it. It just the visual helps you connect story points, I find.
It does. And, you know, I was doing the mind map today of the next series that I'm doing, and I saw a pattern that I hadn't seen, but because it's a mind map, it's like 2 characters are mirroring each other and then they merge later. And I hadn't thought of that before. So the visual aspects, not getting caught in all the details, has really helped just structure how you would introduce each of the chapters to kind of like have this cool little mirroring of 2 completely different people. So there's a lot of advantages.
Fun. It's fun doing all these creative things.
Yeah, it is.
So, I know. I'm really excited. I'm really excited about that. Well, Suzanne, thank you so much for presenting that. That is a treasure for us. Like you said at the beginning, why would you want to be faster? Oh my gosh, why would you not want to be faster? Why would you not want to get those books, get them out there?
Yeah, and that's why I like it, because sometimes you get an idea, you do it for 6 weeks, like I don't really like this, I want to try something different, and you've got a year doing that. That's depressing.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. I mean, I don't know that experience, but yeah, it is. All right. Well, is Dan still here? I can't tell if he's here or not. Dan,
Dan fell off. Yeah, he's at.
Yeah. Once again, thank you congratulations so much is what I'm trying to say on the new book, which releases Monday. And we wish you much success with that. Excited to read it. It sounds really good. And for anyone else who's interested in sponsoring one of our meetings, like I said, the link is right there on the caprockWriters.com website. We would love to celebrate your new releases or your gallery shows or things like that with you. What else? April, Next meeting is April 10th. Dan is going to be doing a video on an illustrated technique that he has, and we're also going to have Jennifer Archer, who I had her website pulled up. She's going to be doing a video on writing for us, and I'm not sure what her topic is going to be, but it's going to be writing focused. And so let me share.
And she's a freelance writer and an editor, so she's got a really good, I'm sure she's got a really good handle on story structure and all those things. I'm not sure what she's covering.
She does. She's a multi-published author and publisher, and so she has a writing and publishing business. She's in Amarillo, and I've known her for more than 20 years, and she's a fantastic writer. She writes really funny stories, and she has different genres that she's written in, and so she's going to be a great speaker too. So we're excited to have her.
And Jan, did you mention what Jan is doing for that meeting as well? She's got. Jan, do you want to talk about your piece?
You're muted, Jan.
There. Well, I've got a small video that could be shown if we had time, but I thought we'd do Dan's and then Jennifer's, and then if there is time for mine, or mine can be shown some other time too. But mine was just a illustrative process for graphic novelists. If they're working on graphic novels and they'd rather use Photoshop than paint it out themselves, I had a step-by-step, real quick system of how to create that graphic novel look.
Fun. That's cool.
Excellent. Yeah.
I think we'll have time, Jan, so let's plan on that.
Okay.
So,
all right.
Beautiful. All right. Well, I think that's going to wrap up this meeting. Does anybody have anything else to say? Anything else they want to share? Any celebrations? Good news?
I finished my second draft.
Yay! Yay! Congratulations. Excellent. That's very good. Excellent. All right. Well, I'm excited I'm going to spend the rest of the day doing a little mind mapping and brainstorming my next book. So I'm going to, I've never written a first draft in 6 weeks, but I am going to give it a shot with this. So I'm excited about that.
Just get past the transcript, give yourself time for the transcription, recognize it's not natural for you, but just use it, even if you do a short story, just to see how that goes. Just try and plow through if you can, because
I'm going to. Man, the idea of writing 2,000 words in 10 minutes is so tempting.
And I use that for NaNoWriMo.
Yes, that's what I'm going to do for Camp Nano. So
yeah, you get super busy and you're like, 10 minutes, I can get this done. And it's you still have to go fix it later, but you're getting the story down. So
yeah, you're going to fix it later anyway. So
exactly.
All right. Excellent. Well, much luck to everyone with their writing and illustrating, and we look forward to seeing you next month. All right. Take care. Thanks for coming.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Suzanne. It's been great.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you, Suzanne. It was wonderful.
Thank you.